Okay. Are we recording? Okay. Okay, we would like to welcome everyone to the March 6, 2024 business session of the Cottonwood Heights City Planning Commission. We have a full house tonight, and we're grateful in this city for citizen engagement. We know that the issue that we're discussing is of lots of interest to many of you, and I think that many from the surrounding area. We, first of all, just as a matter of business, if you just arrived, if you have interest in making a public comment when we get to that period, if you'll please fill out a comment card and deliver it to staff here for us to keep things in order a little bit. We also have a number of individuals online here, and including Commissioner Jonathan Ebler, who serves with us on the Planning Commission, and we acknowledge him as well. And just as a matter of keeping things in order, are there any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest that need to be disclosed by any of the commissioners?
None.
And I'm seeing none. Commissioner Ebler?
No.
None. We do have a quorum. What is in order at this point is that we have a period of general public comment. That means that if you have something that you would like to presents to the Planning Commission that is unrelated to the item that we have on our agenda, this would be your opportunity to share for 3 minutes. We have a good stack of speaker comment cards. I'm going to presume that all of you are here to speak on the issue on the agenda. If you would raise your hand if you are here to speak on something other than the issue that we are going to consider. And I am not seeing any hands. Okay. So just as a reminder, just for you to be thinking, we're going to turn the time over to staff to present on this item. But just as a reminder, our public comment policy, verbal public comments are accepted during the general public comment component of the 6 p.m. business session, but not during the 5 p.m. work session. Note that public comment periods are an opportunity for individuals to share public comments as they see fit, but are not an opportunity for question and answer dialogue. Questions can be directed specifically to city staff at planning@ch.utah.gov. Verbal comments provided during the public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per individual, or 5 minutes per spokesman who has been asked by a group that is present to summarize their concerns. And alternatively, we also accept written comments relative to our deliberation today. That deadline has passed. I would encourage you, nevertheless, if you have something you feel is relevant, it may not affect this deliberation, but nevertheless, the planning staff is always anxious to receive public comment. So at this time, what's in order? We will hear a presentation from staff on project SUB-24-001, a public hearing and possible action on a request from Justin Jones on behalf of Cade and Kaylee Huntsman for a subdivision amendment to consolidate 3 lots within the Golden Hills Canyon subdivision located at 3874 East Golden Hills Canyon Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So maybe for the benefit of the public, I'm on staff. My name is Mike Johnson. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director for the city. So I'll be providing an overview to the commission. If you're in the work meeting, it'll be very similar. It's pretty detailed, but I think it's important given the public interest in this item tonight. So this is project SUB-24-001. The reason it's in front of the Planning Commission is it represents an amendment to an existing subdivision, Golden Hills Canyon, located within the city. Let's hope this presentation stays with us this time. This is a request to consolidate 3 lots in the subdivision, the eastern 3 lots, into 1 lot. The applicant is Justin Jones. Staff's recommendation is approval of the preliminary plat, and over the next 20 minutes, I'll explain why that is. Some context, the address of these properties is as shown on the screen there. It is owned by the Huntsmans under that LLC name. The total area of the 3 lots combined is 1.68 acres. So each of those is just over half an acre. And again, the request is to consolidate 3 existing lots in the Golden Hills Canyon subdivision into one. This on the screen here is the existing subdivision. It's an 8-lot subdivision. And Commissioner Smith, I put the mouse pointer up as big as I could, so hopefully that's a little more visible now. It's comically large. So there's 8 lots. They are all accessed off of Golden Hills Canyon Road, and that's a private roadway. You can see the road on the subdivision plat. It goes all the way up through lots 7 and 8. In reality, that road dead ends right about here at the end, the eastern edge of lot 4 today. So lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 are developed. They have single-family homes on them. Lot 5 remains undeveloped, and then lots 6, 7, and 8 are the subject of tonight's request, again, to consolidate those 3 lots into just one. I also want to state this subdivision plat was approved and recorded well before Cottonwood Heights was incorporated as a city in 1970. So they received that development entitlement through Salt Lake County back in 1970. Some background, again, it's an 8-lot subdivision originally entitled for development via plat in 1970. And I keep saying that because it's an important factor in staff's recommendation and review. When a subdivision or when a parcel of land becomes entitled through a subdivision, that grants a presumption that that property can be built on. If this were a parcel of land that was not part of a subdivision, the staff analysis would be very different because there's no presumption or establishment of any entitlement for development on an unsubdivided parcel of land. That is not true of an entitled parcel, and the fact that it was approved and platted under Salt Lake County in 1970 matters a little bit, but not substantially. And the example I raised in the work session is there's a lot on top of the World Drive, just a mile or so to the north of this location. That very similar situation, the lot itself was not buildable under current city ordinance, but it was approved as a buildable lot as part of a subdivision plat well before the city was a city. The owner of that lot applied for several variances to develop that lot, and those variances were granted by the city's hearing officer with the primary finding that the entitlement of the lot through a subdivision plat factored into that decision to allow development on steep slopes and development with different setbacks and different lot coverages than the ordinance normally allows. So the subdivision plat entitlement is very important here. Homes currently exist on lots 1 through 4, 5 through 8 remain undeveloped. Again, access through private roadway, and then Little Willow Creek and Deaf Smith Creek run through the subdivision, as well as some irrigation lines. The city boundary is directly on the eastern edge of these properties. This is the furthest east you can go in the city. To the east of that is unincorporated land owned by the U.S. Forest Service. So this picture here is a little complicated, but this shows the preliminary subdivision plat. All of the color on this plat represents a few different things. The red, orange, and pink, predominantly on the northern side and on the southern side, represent a natural slope that exceeds 30%. And that's important to note because in the city's sensitive lands ordinance, any natural slopes of 30% or greater cannot be developed. There's a limitation on developing and disturbing 30% slopes, particularly east of Wasatch Boulevard. The green area then is areas where the slope is not 30%. Not necessarily all buildable, but the slope is not 30% in those green areas. What's a little hard to see on this screen is right along, about this line that my cursor is following here, is the existing waterway, Deaf Smith Creek, I believe. The culvert and diversion happens to the east of the property, and then that creek flows through the existing lot 8 outside of the property, and then down through lot 6 as well. So that creek is part of this property. And then the applicant, basically when factoring in the waterway and steep slopes and other hazards that have been assessed, this kind of dark hashed area in here is what they have indicated as being the viable buildable area. That will still go through final technical review by the city, but that's generally the area free of sensitive lands, hazards, waterways, and other natural obstructions. Zoning analysis of this property. The property is zoned F121, which is a foothill residential zone. In that zone, new lots must be at least 1/2 acre in size. There's also provisions in that zone that the watershed must be analyzed before any development can occur, and a few other things that are not as typical in other residential zones in the city. This is meant primarily for these foothill areas, and we don't have a lot of this zoning in the city. The stated purpose in the zone, and this is quoted right out of the ordinance, is to provide residential development opportunities for property owners within steep slopes and hillsides in the city, while providing preservation of the natural landscapes of hillsides. So a lot of emphasis on natural protection in this zone. As such, one kind of interesting provisions in that ordinance is that property line setbacks, in most other zones, it's a flat 25-foot front setback, 20-foot rear setback. It's very well established. In the F121 zone, it is a case-by-case basis proposed to city staff that is approved. The direction in the ordinance given to city staff is that buildable area should be in areas that result in the least disturbance of natural hillsides possible. That discretion does not allow the city, and this was brought up in the work session, does not allow the city to approve variations to the sensitive lands restrictions or riparian setbacks or other standards that exist. That is simply property line setbacks with an emphasis to avoid sloped areas. Another big factor on these lots as the city reviews it for development are the sensitive lands elements of it. There are 5 identified existing or suspected natural hazards present on the site, which require screening and analysis through the sensitive lands ordinance. Those being debris flow, landslide, slope stability, rockfall, and then riparian hazards. The top 4 there, debris flow, landslide, slope stability, and rockfall, were approved for some site scoping and some preliminary engineering activity back in 2022 and have continued on and off over the last couple of years. So there have been some pretty extensive studies done, some land disturbance up there that I'm sure people have noticed, of some clearing of vegetation in order to dig test pits and things like that. That was all in an effort to identify the extent of these hazards, the impact of these hazards, and then what mitigation would be required to safely develop around these hazards. And then the riparian setback will apply when the building permit application comes in eventually. And that's a standard basically that requires any outside regulatory agency that's involved in waterway review to provide their approval to the city, typically being Salt Lake County Flood Control, sometimes being the state of Utah as well, depending on the impact to the waterway. But it also includes a minimum 20-foot setback from the top of bank of any open waterway. I'll now talk about trail connectivity, and I suspect this is the reason a lot of the public is interested in attendance tonight. Golden Hills Canyon subdivision has no existing legal established public access to Deaf Smith Canyon. There's not an existing trail that's publicly dedicated or owned by the city or public in any formalized way that provides access from the public area to the west on Kings Hill Drive up to Deaf Smith Canyon to the east on Forest Service property. That being said, the trail connectivity that you see on the screen here has been identified in the city's Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan and other master plans well before that. There is a desire, a public desire, and there has been for a long time, to provide public access to Deaf Smith Canyon. The property between this public right-of-way down here and Deaf Smith Canyon over here, on the subject property to the north and to the south, is all under private ownership by private parties in the city. None of that is on public lands. So there's long been a challenge in getting public access across private lands. skip the code provision. One of the first requirements of the applicant that the staff pointed out was that provision that's quoted on the screen here. This comes out of our subdivision ordinance, and it requires that anytime a subdivision application happens, that dedication or grant of easement of trails necessary to provide public access to public lands and other trails shown on the city's general or adopted area master plans or required by the Planning Commission are required to be completed at the subdivision level. And then it states, trails shall be located so that the route is feasible for both construction and long-term maintenance. Insurmountable physical obstructions shall be avoided. The specific location of the trail right-of-way shall be verified on the ground before final approval of the subdivision. The amount of land required for trail dedication without compensation shall not exceed 5% of the land within the subdivision, excluding trails located within a standard street right-of-way. So like I said, that is a requirement of any subdivision of land that comes in. If this application did not come in and instead the applicant simply requested a building permit to develop on one or more of the existing lots that are there, this requirement does not necessarily trigger because there's no subdivision of land. But because they are proposing a subdivision amendment, albeit one to reduce the amount of potential future development rather than increase it, this requirement still is in effect, and we have proposed that as a correction item to the applicant. They responded just early this morning with the exhibit shown on the screen and a response letter that I've included the applicant's answer to here. And it states, the owners are offering to give a northern portion of Lot 8. I'll step back here or I'll step forward for 1 second. You can see Lot 8, the northern portion, which is shaded a little darker on the screen, is proposed to be dedicated, a fee title dedication to the city for use as a public trail. The response then states, the owners are offering to give a northern portion of Lot 8 to allow the city to own the property connecting the parcel to the west and the Forest Service land to the east. In addition, the owners plan to pay for a portion or possibly all of the cost of the trail construction that will cross the northern portion of Lot 8, as well as the portion of the trail that connects Deaf Smith Canyon to Willow Creek Canyon. And I will state that that portion of it is off of the subject property to the east, would require coordination with the Forest Service. It is anticipated that trail construction will occur during the beginning phases of construction on the subject property. The proposed location of the trail is shown on the plat maps and will be staked on site at a future date. So staff's analysis of this recent submittal is summarized here, but the proposed trail dedication area generally does align with the city's master plan, which is shown there, and must be field verified prior to final plat recordation construction plan approval. Again, to justify and demonstrate and verify that that trail alignment is feasible, there are no insurmountable objects in the way, that it does reasonably connect in with the future trail alignment. The city cannot require dedication or construction of trail facilities beyond the extent of the proposed lot consolidation. So all we are legally required or allowed to require is the dedication of trail easements through the subject property, so through Lot 8. However, the applicant is proposing to construct trail improvements off of their property to the east as well. Trail development on adjacent lands will require approval from applicable landowners, in this case, the U.S. Forest Service. The proposed dedication provides the first piece of formal legal public access to Deaf Smith Canyon and furthers the goal of the city's Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan. And then one thing, the city would be required to approve any dedication of a right-of-way or even an easement. So we will work with the applicant and the owner to ensure that there's enough flexibility in where that final trail alignment is shown to ensure that it's feasible to connect on both ends in the future. So this is a zoomed out context of the same thing I just showed, but this does show that the applicant has done an analysis of where that trail easement could come down from the road to the north, across private property, up near Golden Hills Canyon Road, and then eventually through Lot 8 of the proposed consolidated lot. So it hits that northern portion, and then again, how they would propose to construct and grade that trail down the slope there crossing the creek, and then down to the southeast as well, providing reasonable access to both canyons. Again, to be verified by staff. So again, all the city can require in a subdivision application is this chunk that I'm circling here on lot 8. What's being proposed is not this piece to the west. That would be something that the city would continue to work with other property owners on, but they are proposing to build a portion or all of this trail connection to the east up into the canyon as well. I will now discuss, because this has come up as well, the difference between prescriptive roads and prescriptive easements. And I'm just going to read the city attorney's email on this. This is a lot of legalese, but I think it's important and it's a key distinction. A prescriptive easement is created through an individual's open, continuous, and adverse crossing of another's property for at least 20 years. The right to a prescriptive easement belongs to the individual user who meets those criteria, who can enforce it legally through the courts. So that's an individual right. A prescriptive easement isn't something the city can impose on a property. A prescriptive road, on the other hand, is different. It requires demonstration of continuous use of an area as a road for 10 years. And then that is then recognized as a public roadway. And the city council, a previous city council, I should say, heard from the state property rights ombudsman on this matter a number of years ago in relation to this area, but also other informal trail areas on the east bench of the city. And this is the city attorney's summary of how that started and where that went. Excuse me, a lot of talking, sorry. Several years ago, the city explored whether it feasibly could assert creation of one or more public trails above Wasatch Boulevard under the prescriptive road statute. Information from trail users was solicited, and the city manager and city attorney ultimately met with about 7 trail users who were willing to speak about their use of trails over the years. Of those, several had not used the trails for the necessary 10 years. Of the others, not all had used the same trails, although there was some overlap. Ultimately, the city felt that it hadn't found a sufficient body of compelling evidence of the necessary open, continuous, adverse, uninterrupted use for the required time period. During this time, the city also consulted with outside legal counsel on the issue of whether it felt the city could successfully use the prescriptive road statute for this purpose. Outside counsel advised that success was possible, but not assured. Given that and the perceived evidentiary challenges, further inquiries on the issue were suspended. And this would have been in the last couple of years. That is all to say that there's never been a legal establishment that this is a prescriptive road. It could be. If the city started recognizing it as a prescriptive road, it is also likely that some property owner along that prescriptive roadway would challenge the city's assertion, and that would result in litigation. And that's where the statement comes in that based on the interviews and the evidence that the city collected, there was not enough there to pursue that, given the risk of litigation at the time. That is a long way to say there is no formalized, recognized public access there today. And that has not been challenged or pursued further than what I just explained. So as it relates to the lot consolidation, getting a dedicated portion of that future trail access in a way that's feasible seems beneficial, given some of the uncertainty regarding the prescriptive easement and prescriptive road statutes. Back to the procedure that the commission is considering. We are at the preliminary plat phase. As I explained in the work session, this is essentially a proof of concept. Approval of a preliminary plat does not immediately result in the lot consolidation happening. It doesn't mean there's going to be a building permit issued tomorrow and construction is underway. Proof of concept in as much as there are no obvious ordinance violations resulting from the lot consolidation. It is at least feasible that the applicant could meet all ordinance requirements and the lot consolidation could be approved. There's a long road between preliminary plat and final approval, however, and that requires resolution and approval of all technical staff correction items, resulting in a final plat that would execute the lot consolidation, again, from 3 lots down to 1. And then there's another piece of that that would be final site construction plans. Civil plans like site grading and erosion control and utility plans and how they provide water and sewer to the site and things like that. Finally, that would culminate in a building permit for any eventual home on the property. And while there is a home footprint shown on some of the plans that have been shown tonight, that has not been reviewed by the city yet. That doesn't happen until that building permit step at the very end. So all we're considering tonight is whether the lot consolidation is feasible or not. This is not all the review comments, but this is a summary of the nature of the comments given from staff to the applicant. It's pretty extensive. It's numerous pages of review comments. But this is a summary that I think is helpful. The applicant must show all slopes, hazard areas, waterways, and other natural conditions on the plat. So we need to know what areas of the plat are buildable, which are not. And then on top of that, we need to see the engineering of, even if there are areas that are buildable, they can still impact the hazardous areas, and that requires engineering design and mitigation, and they need to demonstrate that as well. The applicant shall show trail easement or dedication through the property, again, in a way that's feasible for future public access. This is a big step, this third one here. The applicant must obtain approval from water and sewer districts and any other outside regulatory agencies, including but not limited to Salt Lake County Flood Control, the state of Utah, U.S. Forest Service, the irrigation company, and there are a number of easement rights on this property that are proposed to be dedicated. We need to see approval of all those things and resolution of those matters between the outside agencies and the applicant before we can cross that item off the list. The applicant must show and label buildable areas on the plat. Submittal must obtain fire department approval, and it has been granted preliminary approval by the fire department. To summarize their initial requirements, they are requiring the access road be at a minimum, I think, of 15 feet wide so that a fire apparatus could reasonably get up there. And then that any future home is required to have automatic fire sprinklers installed, which will factor into the water district's review because that requires a certain fire flow to provide that service. The applicant must demonstrate implementation of previous sensitive lands hazard studies. Impacts and mitigation around existing waterways and irrigation lines must be demonstrated and approved. This can include all the way up to state approval, stream alteration permits, Salt Lake County flood control approval, the health department's watershed analysis would fall into this, and then any negotiations required with the irrigation company as well. There's a bridge proposed to cross the creek and access the home. That must be designed, engineered, and permitted. And then again, flood control plan and stream alteration permit required prior to final approval. Each of those has about 3 or 4 different specific code references associated with it, but that's a summary. It's very technical. It's very complicated. Development on this lot will not be easy and will be an extensive review process. But staff has reasonably assessed that there is a pathway from preliminary plat to final plat if they can achieve all these things. So staff's findings: consolidation of 3 entitled lots into 1 results in more natural preservation. This is more compatible with the F121 zoning district than the current condition. I want to make this very clear from staff's analysis. The consideration tonight is not one lot being potentially developed or no development. The consideration is there are 3 entitled lots, which means there's a potential, not a guarantee, but a potential for 3 lots to be developed if this were denied or found not to be compliant with code, or if they hadn't made this application. Potential for development on 3 lots, not necessarily an opportunity for the city to require a trail easement either if those don't go through the subdivision process, as opposed to what's being proposed, which is a single family home being developed on 1 lot instead of those 3, with trail dedication and all the other technical review by the city against sensitive lands codes and other ordinances. Providing partial trail dedication for Deaf Smith Canyon access furthers the goals of the city's general and master plans. And actually the applicant goes beyond what the city could actually require and proposes more construction that even implements those goals in a better way. And then the project will continue its technical review process. And my slide keeps changing, sorry. Until all items are completed and found satisfactory. So thank you for bearing with me. That's a lot of information, I understand. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat based on all the findings I've presented and those in the staff report. And then I've provided model motions there. So I will just go back to an overview. I'm happy to turn it back to the commission for any questions.
Any clarifications from the commissioners?
I had one question in regards to the prescriptive easements on roadways. So is it possible for prescriptive easements to be applicable for a private roadway if the city hasn't been using that as a private roadway? Or is this managed by the city as private? And is there an agreement with the city to manage this?
The city does not manage or maintain or remove snow or provide any services on the private roadway.
Okay.
So that's all up to the, I don't know if there's a homeowners association or just the collective of private owners on this roadway.
So is there any precedent as far as a prescriptive easement for private roadways versus public roadways and, you know, kind of the access or thoroughfare through that?
I think the public use portion of the prescriptive road requires continuous public use of the road for 10 years. I don't know that a private roadway serving 8 lots would constitute that. That would be a better question for the city attorney, but that is just based on reading the state code, my best guess.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
I had another question about the,
Okay.
following up
Open
on that.
Public comments. We do have a stakeholder. Oh, we do have the applicant here. Okay. Would the applicant like to speak to this?
I'm here. Justin Jones with Civil Science, the applicant on behalf of Caden Callie Huntsman. We appreciate the level of detail that staff has gone through in this and in their recommendation. We concur that this is going to be a technically challenged project to finish, but we do see a pathway to finish as well. So that's why we're excited to move through the next steps and hopefully get a plat amendment approval and then move forward with all the technical design and calcs that we'll have to do to move this project to completion. Any questions for me as the applicant?
Okay, no questions at this time.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, we have, I think, a stakeholder that may be helpful to our discussion, representing the Big Willow Irrigation Company. Am I understanding that correctly? So is Elliot Christensen? Please, we're happy to give you your 3 minutes. For the public, well, I'll let you describe your role relative to this. And we don't have that available for the public, which I'm a little dismayed. So I'm going to ask you to be descriptive about what you've put in front of us, because this is a little bit unusual.
We just obtained it yesterday from our surveyor, Elliot Christensen, Big Willow Irrigation Vice President, neighborhood occupant, and served on the 8 years with the City Public Utilities Board, president of 3 irrigation companies. This one, Big Willow, I'm serving as vice president. We've been in cooperative mode with the architects and trying to relocate our facilities in the future. But we just,
Could I interrupt for just 1 second? If you can move the microphone a little closer, some people are straining to hear what you're saying.
all right, 6'6" doesn't help me in that regard. They don't call me Big L for nothing, so. Shorty is the other nickname. But anyway, we have thought that we were in a prescriptive mode on this and following state statute 73-115.5, which is where we've been laboring. But now we've understood that there is an actual recorded easement that we've obtained a copy of and recorded at the county, re-recorded it with the county recorder yesterday. But what we have is an absolute right under a 1967 agreement when the area from Wasatch Boulevard up to the Forest Service, the Golden Hills development was originally approved. There was an easement recorded that we've discovered that not only gives us absolute right to the specific roadway as an easement to access our diversion box that's now located on the Forest Service, but we also have, because in those days people were drinking the water. There's still a couple of old timers left that still drink it because of the water quality. We have an absolute right to fence the forest boundary there to protect the drinking water quality. And then state of Utah approval is needed to move our diversion box from the east side of the lot on the Forest Service to the west side of the lot. So unlike the waterway pipeline easement itself, the diversion box requires a state of Utah approval. So we're open to negotiating both the removal of the fence requirement in the original documents in 1967 and to relocate our pipeline easement, but we would expect some compensation according to appraisal from the landowner. So those are the two technical items on your findings and the technical correction item number 2, and also under number 7 with our recorded easement there. It is a specific recorded easement rather than a prescriptive easement, both for the roadway and for the waterway. Just in time. I have a copy of the new document for the applicants.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. We appreciate that. And as a member of our community and also in your role with the Big Willow Irrigation Company, we appreciate your contribution. Thank you. Hopefully 100 more. Okay, what is in order now are the public hearing portion. And as a reminder, 3 minutes, and this is not a chance to interact with the Planning Commission or to ask questions, but to simply make a public comment. So we will take these in the order that we've received them. We'll first hear from Ellen Burrell. If somebody can get her attention in the hallway. Council member? Okay, we're going to move on to the next one. Jim McDowell.
Thank you. I'm Jim McDowell from, I live on 3601 East Kings Cove Way, top of the hill there. And I've been,
Sir, can you really lean into the mic?
Or you
Thank
can
you.
pull the microphone down closer to you as well. Thank you. Are you doing better in the back row? Can you hear okay?
push that there. How's that? Whoa,
That-
hey,
Wow. We're
I'm
getting
Jim
lots of
McDowell.
smiles from the back row.
there we go. 3601 East Kings Cove Way. I've been in the neighborhood for 21 years. I've been accessing the wilderness in Deaf Smith and Little Willow drainages over those years. Currently, the people access it by going up Golden Oaks, crossing the Traverse Trail, getting on the private road and going up the bottom. With this proposal, it's difficult to tell from the latest proposal from the applicant showing that piece of Lot 8 up on the hill where that's going to be, but it looks to me like it's going to push it up onto the hill, which currently there's no access from up on the hill. So if the trail did exist across that Lot 8 and then and beyond, there would still be no access to the beginning of that trail. It kind of begs the question, how are people going to get from what they're currently doing to where this trail would be up on Lot 8? So until that can be addressed and looked at more, I would hope we could have a chance to look at the information that came in today before that gets approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Ross Hinman.
Hi. Thank you to the Planning Commission for allowing us to speak on this important matter. I've been in that neighborhood for 40 years now. And I was really happy to come and speak to you about what my beef is with this particular thing, but I'm upset. I was one of the 7 people that came in and talked about the prescriptive easement. I met with I met for an hour with you people, and apparently it didn't do any good. So I've been hiking that trail for 40 years, but that's not why I'm here. Why I'm here is I'm really concerned about what is the public good that's derived from combining these three lots. Apparently, there's some people that think it's a good idea. I personally do not. Since I've been in the neighborhood for 40 years now, I have real concern about some other developments that I see going up around us. Tavachi, it's great. It's a beautiful neighborhood, but I don't want Top of the World Drive in my little corner there on Top of the World Drive and Top of the World Circle to turn into another Tavachi. If we set precedent by allowing these people to combine three lots that were originally plotted as three separate lots, what precedent do we send to the rest of the people in the neighborhood or of the entire city? Are we now going to allow people to buy 3, 4 houses, tear it down to build their castle and their special place on this earth? I would hope not. That's my concern. That's all I really had to say when I came here, and I appreciate your time. And I would certainly hope that we consider the public good. And if we're going to allow these people to combine 3 lots, I'm afraid it doesn't end there. It continues on for the rest of the city. That's my concern. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Russ. Melissa Fields.
Hi, I'm Melissa Fields. I live at 8421 South Kings Cove Drive in Cottonwood Heights. First, I just want to thank the staff for all the work on this because I'm on the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee. And I know that there was, sure, hours of work put into this process. But I'd also encourage the staff before the council, I guess, renders the decision on this consolidation to work with the Forest Service on the alignment of the trail so that it not only aligns with Cottonwood Heights Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan, but with the U.S. Forest Service Bonneville Shoreline Trail plans. And I'd like the final plat to also reflect the trail. I wasn't clear in the presentation if the plat will actually reflect the trail so that moving in to the future that this trail will be preserved into perpetuity, the trail easement. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you for your service on Parks, Trails, and Open Space. Brenna, let's see, let's see. Pronounce it for me, Brenna.
Weigel. It's
Weigel.
very hard to pronounce. You'll be surprised how many people stutter over it. Oh, I guess you won't, but my name is Brenna Weigel, an 8th grader at the local middle school. Thank you for your service to our community. Many adults complain about not seeing kids outside anymore and express how when they were young, they had all sorts of fun with their friends in the streets. However, since Cottonwood Heights has not made it a major priority yet to provide reliable public transportation in many cases, consistent planning for sidewalks as well, kids must rely on parents or older siblings to ferry us from friends' houses and after-school programs. This leaves children like me, an unlicensed driver, and the child of 2 working parents unable to access resources outside of walking distance. Still, when we kids persevere and fulfill our need for recreation and find a trail to hike, there are adults who prohibit access to open space and trail areas. And we find ourselves barred from these nature, from exercise, new experiences, and a form of autonomy that we cannot find in our day-to-day lives. These local and accessible trails are not only sections of land, but sections of our hearts and formative pieces of our childhood. These trails are not only places where the air is fresher, but places we thought would remain forever, preserved, untouched for generations. And with that, I will add my voice to the crowd and ask for access to Death Smith Trailhead to be provided for all the kids who can't make it here tonight and ask for their hearts back. Once again, thank you for your service here tonight. And as for the new information that has just came up, I am also worried about how the more public and well-traveled areas would be connected to this new path to Death Smith Canyon. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenna, come back up for a second. That was amazing. So
Thank you.
We don't usually clap, so what we will clap for everybody under 16 that comes to the microphone. We appreciate your engagement. Hopefully, we see a lot more of you in Cottonwood Heights into your adult life. So we very much appreciate, and that was very articulate. So thank you. Chanel Stewart.
Brenda, I'm glad I'm not the youngest one here anymore. I also wish I had been involved in city council and things like that when I was your age, but here I am as a grown adult, and I get to speak my mind and hopefully have an impact. I am a hiker. One of the reasons that I love living in Cottonwood Heights is the accessibility to our canyons. I love the trails that are in our city and start in our city, but there are also a lot of trails like this proposed one that run through people's properties, and they're just not as fun. It feels very uncomfortable. For example, Rocky Mouth Falls, it's literally fenced off to get through this entire trail. Hughes Canyon, so much development up there. It's very uncomfortable. You feel like you can see into these people's houses, and you're not supposed to be there because you feel like you're trespassing, but you're not. So even though the applicant has met the proposal of allowing a trailhead, is it really the right option? Is my proposal, and I hope like everyone else that it feels like here is in consensus that it probably isn't. So I'm here as a local hiker that loves outdoors to be able to still have that access to our trails and mountains. And that's all.
Thank you, Chanel. Scott Davis.
Hi, Scott Davis. I've lived in Cottonwood Heights for the last 10 years. I live on 2816 East Bridgewater Drive. One of the reasons we moved to Cottonwood Heights was this exact trail. Love this trail. Go up there a dozen times a year for the last 10 years. I think preserving access to that canyon, that's the one access point to 20% of the Twin Peaks Wilderness area. Thousands of acres. So critical to maintain that for our community that is so into those kinds of activities and the whole reason that we live here. I'm echo a lot of the sentiments about the access feeling uncertain, and looking at that access many times as we've hiked that trail. I am a little concerned about the proposed access. That's a very rough section of hillside to cut down into the canyon from that high point. I would recommend keeping the access in the bottom of the canyon where it currently resides until those other trails that connect and appropriate trail building could happen to make that a feasible option. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Brian Norberg. Or Norberry. Norberg. Sorry about that, Brian.
Fine. Brian Nordberg, grew up in Sandy and have lived in Cottonwood Heights now for around 25 years. Been hiking that trail for a little over 30 years. I was not one of the 7 hikers asked to speak about that area, but that area has been contentious forever, since high school. Every time you go there, you prep for a fight. And, it's unreasonable to go for a hike and be annoyed at the very start of it and wonder, geez, am I going to get yelled at by the property owners again? This solution is interesting, but it kind of creates a fragment. And I'm concerned that it does not contain a continuous trail that would connect up with everything. So I'd like to see a little more information about how this is going to connect up and make a real trail versus something that's just like, yeah, we did this. Good enough. We fulfilled our obligation, but it really doesn't provide access to the property. It doesn't provide access to that resource. As we know, pardon me, that's critical for our youth. It's critical for everyone to have these recreational opportunities, part of why we live in this area. So I would recommend that we review this and try to create a contiguous plan that doesn't just set aside some property that we can't get to anyway.
Thank you, Brian. Mike Lebecki.
Well, I appreciate the time and energy, and I do believe the builder owner is here tonight, and I echo, first of all, everything everyone said as far as public comment. Raised my daughter hiking up this canyon. It's one of my favorite places for the magic, power, and beauty of solitude in Cottonwood Heights and the Wasatch. And my comment is mainly, I hope the builder will keep his word and have integrity to make sure that there is accessibility to this amazing canyon. So if they're here tonight, please keep your word. I feel like money is going to win over development. But I just hope the builder will keep in mind integrity and quality of life and keeping your word to make sure this is accessible to everyone to enjoy. Thanks.
Thank you. Matt Urick.
Hello, Matt Urick. I think I'm an 18-year resident of Kings Hill Drive, 17, 18, 19, something like that. I've been accessing Deaf Smith Canyon through the Golden Hills subdivision for that entire time. And I think I can document at least for the last 15 years by permission of current residents. I don't know if that factors into the prescriptive use or how we look at it. I'm not opposed to the project. I think it's probably an opportunity. If I were a landowner, I'd be looking to do that as well. I'm not certain that I agree with the assessment that consolidating 3 lots into 1 is better for the canyon or the community. In their current configuration, development of 3 parcels would really allow for more sympathetic development to the natural aesthetic of the canyon and the character of our neighborhood. I'm thinking that drawing that was presented today is probably a 7,000 or 8,000 square foot house. Anyone? Yeah. Whereas
We'd ask you not to interact.
Oh, sorry.
Thank
My
you.
apologies. I forgot. Whereas the current prescriptive use of the lots, I think from code compliance and technical assessment probably keeps that in line with what the neighborhood is used to seeing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, sorry. And I believe we're here today for preliminary approval, not actual approval. Correction in earlier comment. Thanks.
Anya Gale. Am I saying that correctly?
Thank you. It's Anaya Gale.
Anaya, excuse me.
No, it's all good. I am an attorney with Holland and Hart here representing Christine Michael, who is a long-term neighboring resident and resident of the city. She was previously on the council and first of all strongly disagrees with the staff's characterization of the city's previous efforts related to prescriptive rights and this issue as a whole. As we are clearly all aware, there are a number of unresolved issues relating to public access to Deaf Smith Canyon that have been raised and could be affected by this proposed consolidation. In addition to the inclusion of a trail to Deaf Smith Canyon on the city's bicycle and trails master plan and parks, trails, and open space master plan, our client asserts that prescriptive easement rights that benefit the public have been established. These prescriptive rights provide public access to and across these parcels. We respectively request that the Planning Commission do the reasonable thing and table this matter so that the public and individuals have an opportunity to discuss concerns with the city and the applicant in order to preserve the public's right of access to Deaf Smith Canyon and to allow residents and neighbors to make a formal claim to secure and formalize their prescriptive rights. Further, neighbors and residents can then review the location of the trail and proposed improvements. Though this proposed new trail seems like certainly a reasonable give from the applicant, the staff was very clear that there is no connecting point for this trail and that it would require additional negotiations and decisions that would allow that trail connection to anything else. So again, on behalf of my client, we ask that you take the reasonable action and table this matter until more of these issues can be fleshed out and there can be an actual agreement and something that resolves these issues to the satisfaction
of the applicant and the public.
Thank you, Anaya. Jeffrey McKell.
Respectfully appreciate all you guys do. Thoughtful proposal. I guess ditto everything everybody said. Avid trail user. Probably would say I'm opposed to the project. I guess, 1970, that's 54 years ago. And due respect for the plat master who snapped the lines, and we could take pictures of what it looked like back in 1970, and who could imagine that, we're up the canyon building things. But the bottom line is it was platted for 5 or 7. That's what it is today. And that's what is in the words of you guys, is entitled. So that's what's entitled, and it may or may not be buildable, but I don't know why the city would change something. And it's not a shame on what happened in 1970, but if we could undo that, we've come a long way since then. Yeah, why would we change something? We have an entitlement, and the gentleman has an entitlement, but it's not entitled to combine 3 lots. That said, we all are in modern day times. Due respect to the Huntsman party, he's got a respectable proposal. I might ask a couple comments to the ditto. I mean, the 3 lots, maybe there's 2. I don't know what you do on the north side of the creek. The other one that isn't this council, but kind of got the shame on the 1970, but due respect. Then we got kind of the shame on past and present. We're all guilty here of that. Everyone's kind of that has spoken is saying, hey, it would be neat to preserve that place. And I was around when Cottonwood Heights, informed the city, was part of the general plan, the greatest city between the canyons, and we're going to have the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. We haven't really done anything. And you guys are great. You're a new council, and there's other councils. We just haven't done much. And it's a great thing with the Huntsman that we're now talking about the trail, but it isn't connected. We've really done nothing. If we had a Bonneville Shoreline Trail that connected everything, and we're talking about combining a few lots, that might change my opinion, but we don't have a trail system. We do kind of live in a state that is developer friendly, and there's certain rights that come with that, and maybe we support that. But where I'm at is we haven't really focused as a community on preserving things, building a trail network in our community. We got this great city between the canyons, but we've been at it for 20 years, and we got a few paved trails and a few gravel paths through town, but nothing in the foothills, nothing compared to what I challenge us in our community and you guys is look what they've done in Draper, look what they've done connecting other parts of the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. I find it a little bit, and it's not anybody here, it's us as a community over time, shameful that we're talking about combining 3 lots for a new home and we don't really have a trail network. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler Harris.
Hi, I'm Tyler Harris, and I'm the homeowner of Lot 1, Golden Hills Canyon subdivision, and I'm here to make some comments on behalf of 3 of the 4 existing homeowners. So I respectfully request 5 minutes.
I think that's in order.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I want to thank you for your time and dedication on this project. I know it's not an easy job or an easy task, so we appreciate you. That being said, as much as we value your recommendations, we do believe that they miss a few main points. As a lifelong resident of the subdivision, I want to highlight several of the concerns I and my neighbors view as most pertinent. First, consolidation and development of these lots would disrupt a public access trailhead to 2 canyons that has been crucial for over 50 years. Even if a right-of-way is obtained, control by the new homeowner risks hindering access, conflicting with our master plan for public land, not to mention eliminating a prescriptive easement enjoyed by the local community since 1970. Next, this land is sensitive. It's surrounded by steep slopes, pushing any potential home dangerously close to creeks. The slope into the waterways poses a challenge in preventing pollutants from entering our watershed, threatening our precious resources. Third, our close-knit community operates without an official HOA. The Huntsman family's actions thus far, from damaging the city street as well as our private lane to neglecting fire hazards which they have created, prove they are not aligned with our way of living. Fourth, the city water department refused culinary water to the top 4 lots from day one. Updating our pump house again poses major inconveniences, and renegotiating contracts, which is extremely undesirable. This should have been addressed by the previous owner, who was well aware of the issue during the pump house renovation 4 years ago. Fifth, our 50-year-old road is ill-equipped for large construction equipment. Burdening longtime residents physically and financially for a newcomer's sole benefit is completely unfair. Sixth, the 20-acre swaths of privately held land between Kings Hill Drive and Deaf Smith Canyon is already likely subject to a prescriptive easement which connects public streets to the property in question. Furthermore, the vast majority of this private land is in excess of 30 degrees and unlikely to ever be developed. Lastly, I'd like to draw attention to a crucial aspect concerning the combination of 3 lots. This amalgamation permits the construction of a massive home, a stark deviation from our community's ethos. Our neighborhood thrives on the harmony of individuality, and the prospect of one oversized residence stands in stark contrast to the existing structures. The character of our neighborhood is a vital part of our identity, and we implore you to consider this when deliberating on the future of these parcels. Thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you, Tyler. Oh, no clapping, please. Joe Clay. Is Joe still with us? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Frederick Fredrickson.
I'm Freddie Fredrickson, and I live at the mouth of the canyon. I have for 18 years. Hi, Dan. Had a nice meeting with Dan yesterday. We walked up the canyon, and we saw what this canyon is. My big thing is it seems all to be connected to the trail. The trail. But what Mr. Harris offered up by combining these lights, if you've ever been in this trail system, it is a very sensitive area, and it has been degraded over time. I've been there 15 years, and right now it is a hazard what exists there. The promise of having a fence, that's great. You know, the promise that we're going to build a trail where I think you're going to find is going to be not feasible, it is all a part of it. And you have many trail hikers. I've been living with them, dealing with them, talking to them, helping them over the last 15, 17 years. I also bought my house simply because that trail was there. It's a beautiful place. There's no doubt about it. But I think it is going to break down to what it will do to the land, what it has already been done to the land with the minor. This is not compared to what will be done when a large home or any structure would be built there. I think you're going to find if you go up in this area, that's going to be virtually impossible to do that without changing the water system, you know, without changing what we get below. But of course, the future of the neighborhood, I agree with pretty much everyone here. Tyler made the best points. He's been there a long time. And we do have a very unique neighborhood here. Maintaining that, that's what we hope to do. Any way that we can help people get to that trail, I am all for that. but maintaining the land, the water, I think that's most important. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan Tenney.
Hi, my name is Jordan Tenney. I live on 3641 Golden Oaks, which happens to be on the street where the prescriptive trail happens to be heading over into the canyon. This has been an issue that's been on my mind for as long as I've lived in the neighborhood. We've lived in 3 different locations within the Golden Hills area. I've lived there 30 years. And this has always been an issue. I want to say, first of all, the very fact that we're considering putting a home right in the confluence of these 2 canyons is, in my opinion, kind of a travesty. I think that the idea to develop in that particular spot is wrong. I want to clarify. I work in construction, and I happen to work with a crew that has built some of the largest homes anywhere in the state. One of them being 30,000 square feet, and many others. And so I have a unique look at a view of what happens when construction occurs. It is actually very disruptive to the landscape. You have forklifts, and you've got mud, and you've got concrete trucks, and you have workers that have, 10 cars that have to park during that process, et cetera. This would be extremely disruptive, but considering my time here, there is a prescriptive easement. There is no doubt, even the owner of most of the land in this area knows that there has been continual use for decades. And without actually giving some way for the trail to be there, this is very problematic. The north part of that lot that would allow an easement is on a very steep hillside, talus slopes and all kinds of things like that. I personally don't think the home should be built there. But additionally, these lots, honestly, you wouldn't be able to build 3 houses on the separate lots because of the slopes and those types of things. The only way that something could be built is if you do consolidate them. But should we be doing that? I don't think so. I have much more to say. I don't have a lot of time, but additionally, one last point I want to make is that it doesn't consider the Bonneville Shoreline Trail connecting back over towards Little Cottonwood Canyon. It would actually sit on right on where a potential connection to that section of trail would be. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you, Jordan. Kate Huntsman.
I just want to take a couple minutes. Again, Kate Huntsman. I am the new owner up there for the last couple of years. So I just want to clear up a few misconceptions for everybody. First off, I grew up there too, and I've hiked that canyon since I was, 5 or 6 years old. My favorite place on earth. The purpose of trying to consolidate these 3 lots was so that we don't damage the hillsides and kind of ruin that space. We're not building a giant mansion. I think that's been mentioned a few times today. Right now, the square footage is right around 5,000 square feet. And we're actually trying to cut that down a little bit. So we're not going to build a giant mansion in the middle of this walkway. We're trying to solve multiple problems, which is, we worked with the city and the shoreline, Bonneville shoreline people and everybody along this trail system to try to figure out moving forward what we could do with this piece of land to give people access. I do not want to cut off access for anybody. I have, like I said, I've hiked it forever. In fact, I drove a Jeep up there in about 1982. So for me, this is a very sacred piece of property. We're trying to not destroy it. We're trying to create something that's pretty unique. And we've had to combine the 3 lots, so we've got enough room around the creeks and stay away from the hillsides. We're not damaging the land. The house is a little bit of a unique style because we don't want to go flatten the entire earth there and just build a box on top of it. So it's going to be a little bit unique so that we can avoid the creek, so that we can avoid all of that. So we're taking all these things into consideration. We're trying very desperately to make sure that everybody's needs are met. We are not asking for anybody to build a new road for us. We will do that. We're not asking for anybody to solve the water situation. We are doing that. There's no ask in those areas. And so I just want those kind of misconceptions to be put to bed. We've worked really hard for 2 years to make sure that the community understands what we're trying to do. And, you know, I'm grateful for their comments. I think we anticipated a lot of those. We put a lot of work into, you know, answering some of those before we got to this stage, and we will continue to do that. So I've used up most of my time, but I just wanted to clarify a couple of misconceptions and tell you all that we value that land tremendously. It's dear to my heart too, and I'm not trying to cut anybody off of that piece of property. Those 2 canyons are amazing.
Thank you, Cade. Alex Brownlee.
Good evening. I currently live downtown, but my parents have lived on Kings Hill Drive, just down the road, 8892, for approaching 2 decades now. I've just seen this canyon be something that is literally the reason why my parents and a large majority of the people in the neighborhood truly enjoy living in this neighborhood, is because of the access to both the canyons and to that canyon, Deaf Smith Canyon. I really do hope that they're willing to live up to their words, but I'm skeptical on it based off the previous landowner who I've worked for previously. In my dealings with him, he's done everything possible to go into gray areas versus into the true clear black and white. And so I'm just concerned that this is him shunting it to someone else to do what he couldn't. So I hope that this works out well, but especially as a gardener and landscaper that has worked in that area and on the plots in question, it's a very dangerous area to do this work for the sake of the safety of even just the water quality, which we are fortunate enough to live in a place where we don't have to tap our groundwater as much because we have this natural resource. But the farther we build up canyon, the more we're impeding our ability to get clean drinking water that can actually be used in our city. I fully support the things that others have said, like Tyler and Freddie, but I know that my words alone can't sway you, but have a good evening.
Thank you for your comment. Harry Slater.
I live on the private roads. I have people hiking through my property every day, and I take my kids up the trail all the time, and they love it. And I appreciate what the girl said. We want our kids up there, not on iPads and on screens. But I emailed someone in the city today, and they told me they wouldn't authorize this unless there was an easement. And I appreciate what the Huntsmans are offering, and I think they're sincere, but it doesn't seem like an actual trail easement. It seems like an island, unless the city guarantees that they will look into putting a trail through that. Otherwise, I don't think that that actually is an easement, and I think the city should look at this prescriptive easement issue again. Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie. We have a hand raised. Holly Uphold. Can we bring her up? Okay, Holly, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I'll just clarify,
Hello?
she's on Zoom.
Yes.
So I think she'll be making her comment remotely, but thank you.
Yes, no, Holly, can you?
Can
I
you hear
think we
me?
can hear you, Holly.
Awesome, thank you. So I would just like to offer a different opinion regarding the combining of the three lots.
We're not hearing her.
Ugh.
Hold on just a second, Holly.
The audio is fine on Zoom.
Can you hear me now?
I can, but I don't think the rest of the commission can.
All right, Holly, try it again.
Okay, what about now?
Still, we still can't hear you yet,
So-
Holly.
So who's the person that can hear me? Can you just relay what I'm saying?
It's like we're getting the transcript of it, but we're not hearing the audio. So
Yeah, I don't think they can hear me
I
either.
think Alex is looking into it to see what
Oh.
setting we can tweak.
I see, thank you.
Okay, do we want to try to just read the transcript? Let's get staff
I'll
just
just
a
go ahead
second
and
here. We want to make sure everybody can be heard. While you're working on that, Holly, stay tuned. Let's go to Kim Allmore, and then we'll come back to Holly.
Hi, thank you for listening to all of us. I've been hiking this canyon for 30 plus years, and it's always been a secret, special place to me that anytime I would take my nephew on a little adventure or a friend, I would make them promise to not tell anybody else. I wanted to keep it private and secret. The water's beautiful, it's pristine, and I would like to ask for the prescriptive rights on that private land, the private drive to be reviewed again, because I know I can list 20 people that we have actively used that trail. We sneak through quietly because we don't want to upset any landowners. And I personally became friends with a lot of landowners, and no one ever was upset about it, the use, except for Dr. Larry Walker, who has the home at the top of the drive. And he's the one that's been trying to rezone the land for the last umpteen years. I've collected articles from the Tribune since like 2008, and the corporation I worked for, I had a land guy that I actually asked to pull up easements, pull up right-of-way access, and it's pre-existing mining areas. It's a pre-existing public right-of-way is the information that had been given to me years ago by my land guy. But anyways, I just would ask that the prescriptive easement be reviewed again, and perhaps there's a way for public access to be used on the road that's now considered private. You know, perhaps that's another possibility, but I do know the Bonneville Shoreline Trail and some Utah Trails committees have been actively looking at this area. And I reached out to a lot of people today, and they just didn't have time to become involved tonight to speak up. So thank you for looking into this and listening to us on all this. I hope I was clear.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, are we ready to try Holly one more time?
Let's try. I think that might be an issue with the system. Holly?
Yes, can you hear me?
I'm sorry.
No?
It looks like our AV system is not functioning. I don't know that we could even hear Commissioner Epler either.
Can you hear me either?
One
I can hear
option
you.
might be,
Yeah, I can
Chair,
hear you too.
I would be happy to read a comment into the record if Holly could email it over to me. I would be happy to read that in if you find that that's appropriate.
Holly, are you agreeable to that?
I don't know if I can type it up fast enough. I'm on my phone right now. I feel like I'd have to get to a computer and turn it on. I don't know if I would
Okay,
make
you know
it in
what?
time.
Maybe we'll take a chance and we'll read the transcript because the audience was able to read that. And
Sure.
Sam, I'm going to ask you to read it for us, just for it to be in the record. Are you up for the challenge? This is a
Yeah,
rare 7:30.
I'd be happy to do it.
So much for your passive role tonight.
Chairman Mills, can you hear me
Don't grow
now?
up the little sister of 4 sisters and not learn how to speak fast. Okay, Holly, if you want to start talking, I will try to read it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys
Awesome. Thank you so
making all
much.
this
I really appreciate you
effort
guys making all
to hear
this
my
effort.
comment. Sorry, it's hard to talk now because I hear you reading it, but hopefully I can get through my train of thought quickly. I know it's late. I just wanted to
I
offer,
think I'll wait for Holly to say her whole thing and then I'll read it because otherwise I'm interrupting her.
That's okay. You probably have access to more of the transcript than we do. We're just seeing that one line at a time.
awesome. Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the effort you guys are making for me to voice my opinion, and I will be quick. I have lived in Cottonwood Heights for 10 years. I have 3 young children, and I feel like I constantly hear from friends and community members about how they wish Cottonwood Heights was more affordable for young families. You know, I feel like our city is aging rapidly. There's been discussions of closing down elementary schools, et cetera, et cetera. And where I'm going with all of this is that I guess I'm really concerned about the combining of 3 lots, simply from like a supply and demand perspective, where we're reducing the amount of supply in an already highly expensive area, and sort of, I would say, even restricting access to young families who want to move into the area. So just another perspective to consider. And thank you for your time.
Okay, Holly, I think I've got the rest of your comment. Was that everything?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So
Okay.
not a dialogue between commenters, but I'll go ahead and read Holly's comment into the record. I videotaped the caption, so hopefully I get this right. All right. So from Holly Uphold, appreciate all the effort you guys are making for me to voice my opinion, and I will be quick. I have lived in Cottonwood Heights for 10 years. I have 3 young children, and I feel like I constantly hear from friends and community members about how they wish Cottonwood Heights was more affordable for young families. You know, I feel like our city is aging rapidly. There's been discussions of closing down elementary schools, et cetera, et cetera. And where I'm going with all of this is that I guess I'm really concerned about the combining of 3 lots simply from like a supply and demand perspective, where we are reducing the amount of supply and in an already highly expensive area. And I would say even restricting access to young families who want to move into the area. That is the end of Holly's comment.
Thank you, Holly. We appreciate that. And thank you for staff for a quick pivot. Michael Malone. Oh, he did not wait us out. Okay. Nicole Ziegler. With Mike. Okay. We're going fast here. Luke Hoffman.
Thank you. Luke Hoffman, I'm a resident of Cottonwood Heights. I've been frequenting that canyon since the 90s and really love both of those canyons. I think it would be appropriate to table the combining the 3 lots until we have a trail system plan that's been adopted, approved, and in cement, so to speak, right? So we know exactly where those trailheads are going to be and where they go and where they can be accessed. Secondly, I think that the environmental impact will be so great on that land that I worry that any remediation that's needed is going to cause, further environmental impact, and it can be pretty disastrous for this area and the water supply. I think that keeping it natural and the way it is now and improving upon the access point and trails that can access that canyon is probably more important, and would be more in favor of the residents of Cottonwood Heights and the long-standing history of access to that canyon and preserving the beauty that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think we've gotten through all the comment cards. Okay. Please come to the microphone and introduce yourself. And take your time.
Hi, my name is Shannon Cochran, Cottonwood Heights resident lived here 15 years, been accessing this canyon for at least 28 years. I just wanted to make sure that we realize that this is a beautiful, rugged place. It's not a simple trail. It's not an easy hike. The walls along the sides are extremely steep. The access proposed on Lot 8, like for Lot 8, is probably not developable to begin with, but also the proposed plan doesn't make a lot of sense because it continues to ruin the hillside. Continuing with the trail that exists makes the most sense. So if the Huntsmans are really willing to work with the community, they should be able to figure out a way to build their property that allows for the current trail to exist. And the damage that's already been done at the mouth of that canyon on their surveying is preposterous. The debris that's been left, the fire hazard, even the water, the taking of the water for irrigation and the loss of the big, beautiful cottonwoods is a shame. But in their just surveying efforts, they've already damaged the area irreparably. And if they can promise to bring it back and make it beautiful again, that's what would be expected. But sorry, I really love this canyon. I understand development and change and progress, but it needs to be done with keeping this beautiful place in mind. And I've been hiking there for at least 28 years. And we just need to keep it. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, go ahead, come to the microphone and give us your name.
My name is Vladimir Makarov. I live on Golden Hills Avenue, pretty close to the area under discussion. And my main concern, like most people who spoke here, is the ability of the public to access public lands. And especially our canyon, which is really beautiful. And as long as that access is guaranteed and given to us, I will be okay with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please come forward and give us your name.
Hi there. My name is Tad Turgeon. I'm a resident of Cottonwood Heights. I'd just like to discuss the legal precedents here. In the work meeting, we discussed the easement and the road. This area meets both those requirements. We also heard from the water company, and they have an easement on there. So I don't see how there's any question about what, if we could put the slide back up with the map. Either way, whether you combine the lots or not, we have a public easement through that area. These landowners, if they could keep us out, they would be doing it. There's been problems for years. So we have public access to it. We have an easement there. If we need our lawyer to go figure that out and not interview 7 people, then that's what we need to do. But we have an easement there. It's a road, it's an easement, it's established there. Now, the legal question is, we've established 8 lots in 1970, built on 8 lots in 1970. What's the legal precedence to combine these? How does it benefit this council? How does it benefit the people of Cottonwood Heights? Those are the questions I ask. So I don't see legal precedence to combine these. I see legal precedence to move forward as noted. And you can have the 3 lots separate, and you have your giant road right through the middle of them that's owned by Cottonwood Heights. So that's where I see this moving forward to. I respect everybody's comments here. I respect the applicants' efforts here. And thank you for letting me make comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you for your engagement. This is one of the great things about living in Cottonwood Heights is it's such an engaged citizenry, and We appreciate the respectfulness, especially that you've treated one another and the applicant and the staff and the commission. This is traditionally been a wonderful, wonderful bubble to see where civic engagement and dialogue is a healthy thing. And so we appreciate and respectfully express gratitude for everybody's involvement here. So with that, I will close the public hearing, and this will now be the opportunity for the Planning Commission to deliberate.
Commissioner Mills, I emailed Commissioner Ebeler my phone number. If we can probably rig up a speakerphone into the microphone situation, just letting him know that if he needs to weigh in, he's got my phone number and can do that.
I have a feeling Commissioner Ebeler is going to have something to contribute to this conversation. So he's smiling and nodding. So let's go ahead and get him queued up. Or we can make him use sign language. That might be a little limited. He's very talented, but I don't know if he's there yet. Okay, to the Planning Commission. What are your thoughts? Who wants to start? You know, I'm going to ask from all of you, so you can go now or you can go later.
I've got my finger on the button. I guess I'll go. There's a lot of great participation here, as you've noted, Commissioner Mills. I am of the opinion that we have to have a pretty good reason as a governmental agency to intrude on property owners' rights to do what they want to do with their own property. Having said that, there's a lot of interest here in assuring public access to a public resource. And I'm sorry, I've not been on this hike, but I will fix that soon. So I'm left with a lot of confusion. I would like to respect the property owner's rights to do what they want to do with their property, but I also know there's a lot of other interests here, and I'd like to make sure that we have access to that beautiful trail that I'm hearing about. So that's my initial reaction to this. There's probably more.
Thank you.
I'll jump in. So being a resident and a neighbor to this community, you know, we're just a few blocks away. I've got 2 young kids. So we frequent this hike often. I brag about being able to, you know, walk to a cave in my backyard and walk to the, you know, waterways up there. And every time that I go on this hike, I'm concerned that I'm going to get yelled at and, you know, show my kids something that is inappropriate because we're breaking the law by accessing this private lane, and we're breaking the law by trespassing. There's signs, no trespassing, the whole way to get to this. So I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at a couple different factors. I'm looking at the factor of property rights, and I'm looking at the factor of trail usage. And I think this is a much bigger issue than this small little piece of property that's accessing this beautiful open space. And I think the issue that we have here is it is a county issue. I think it is a trail system issue. I think it is something that, once again, you know, Weigel, it was so beautiful for you to come up and here and talk, but you know, our kids are using our backyard here, and our backyard and the playground of Cottonwood Heights is our mountains. And the cohesiveness and the connectivity of our mountains right now, it's so segmented because of these properties that there's not enough people that are playing ball to make this work. And I think with Bonneville Shoreline, and I think with a lot of these, you know, hiking groups out there, they're working with private landowners to, you know, make these adjustments and to grant a hike in their private land. Now, that's why I bring up property rights. And I think specifically on this property rights, you know, if you have an acre of land here in Cottonwood Heights and
in the backyard, somebody uses it every single day. And it's a beautiful thing. And then, somebody else catches on and starts using that every single day. And then, now you've got a dozen people using it every single day. And in that situation, when it becomes a nuisance, that's when you can make it hard. And now you're the bad guy for cutting that off and putting a fence up. And I think in this regards, we need to look at how do we connect these four groups. We've got Cottonwood Heights, we've got multiple private landowners around here to create these connectivity points to then create trail systems. And I think for us, the applicant has property rights on this. So if they decided to, cut off access, they can. And right now there is a private road to access this point. So once again, anybody that's accessing it is illegal right now. And, from that perspective, I think that we need to really evaluate this and figure out a way to, number one, uphold property rights for Cottonwood Heights and for the citizens and ownership in Cottonwood Heights. Number two, figure out property connectivity, or I'm sorry, trail connectivity. And I think that, there's a lot of different ways. If Mike, could you pull up the trail maps for the master plan currently? Because the master plan was done within the last 10 years, is that correct?
Yeah, within the last like 2 or 3 years, that master plan was done.
Okay. So currently, this is the master plan for Bonneville Shoreline, is that correct?
Well, this shows the potential access to Deaf Smith from Golden Oaks Drive. I don't know if that's the name of it, to the north. And then the dark line that runs here is the Bonneville Shoreline Trail alignment.
So
this shows both.
Is there any overlay of this to show the property that's in question currently?
Possibly. Let me exit here. I can probably pull that up.
And as he's pulling that up, I think our goal as a commission, as a council, if we send this up to that point, is to uphold, once again, land use. And I think land use is such an important component with this. And, when we have these master plans, and especially trail map master plans, it's incredibly important for us to be able to uphold that, because I think the majority of the concerns for this project is that it's going to restrict access. And I think that is a big issue across the board.
It doesn't have exact parcel lines on it, but it's in this general area here.
Yep.
Oh, it's big on my screen. Oh, sorry. It's, I'll just keep circling it. Right in here. The two lines are not necessarily proposed as two trails. It's just, an upper and a lower alignment that were analyzed when this master plan was done. So these two trails are not necessarily both proposed as trails. The goal is to get public access to Deaf Smith.
And you can see in the middle of those two green lines, the trail.
So again, on master plans, it's general master planning. It's not survey grade accurate data. The intention again is to get public access from this point to the north, along private property and up into Deaf Smith.
So with this, currently, the residents of the private lane would need to also grant access. Is that correct?
That's the city's standing, is we don't acknowledge formal public access that we can advertise as being a public trail. So wherever the trail goes is over private property, and that would need to be negotiated with those owners. Or a claim would need to be made and potentially challenged and upheld.
So with that, currently, if we're looking at it from the standpoint of putting, this master plan and then restricting residents and their property rights to then uphold this master plan, they now need to grant access from what I'm seeing here. So that you now need to grant access through multiple, private lots here. And I think that that's more so what's happening. And from what I understood from you, Mike, it sounds like by consolidating this, we as a city can make that as a stipulation. Is that correct?
Through this parcel, that is correct. So I want to state, as a city, we are very interested in getting public access to Deaf Smith for everybody. Residents, non-residents, everybody. We want to advertise this as an amenity. It's a priority. There certainly could be merit to individuals making prescriptive easement claims today, but that doesn't make the city realize its goal of getting everybody access. The prescriptive road issue was not carried out to its full extent, so we can't do that today. So anyone in this room, if they feel like they have a prescriptive easement claim, could go do that civilly. Lot consolidation or not, that's not impacted because they could still make that prescriptive easement claim. What we're trying to do as a city is acknowledge and recognize and implement formal public access, which we do feel like we are doing through this lot consolidation request. And again, I said it 5 times in my presentation, but the dedication that they're showing does show up on the final plat. It's actually deeded to the city, and it does need to be calibrated with all these trail alignments to make sure it is feasible. So that would happen between preliminary and final, and we'd end with trail alignment that helps us meet all these goals. Bonneville Shoreline Trail included, if that is affected by this property, because that comes through this parcel as well on this map.
And if there was a prescriptive easement, is it just on this property or is it also going to be for every other property owner that's on that lane?
I think it's both. I think what we've heard tonight is residents have used this entire area and feel there may be some prescriptive easement claims. Again, any resident can go make those claims right now.
And that wouldn't affect this consolidation?
I don't think so. That's a civil legal claim. I've got Commissioner Ebler ready. Do you want me to dial him up?
Let's, first of all, let me just acknowledge Cameron Lewis. We see your hand, but unfortunately we've closed.
He is with the applicant. I'll just clarify that and let you do what you will.
Okay, we have closed the public comment and we appreciate your presence on the Zoom. So, Commissioner Ebler, and then we'll hear from Commissioner Anderson.
Sorry, I hope this works.
Appreciate everyone's patience with us ad-libbing.
Thank you. While he's doing that, I will sincerely apologize and we'll get this repaired next time.
We are grateful for the way the city has made so much of this accessible and recorded in multiple formats, but it does occasionally get a little wonky despite the behind the scenes efforts that staff makes to try to make these things accessible is Herculean sometimes, and we're grateful for their efforts. So,
okay, Commissioner Ebler, let's.
Commissioner Ebler.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay?
Very well, actually.
Okay. So in looking at the application and the interpretation of the prescriptive use interpretation, I went out to the property rights ombudsman, and it looks like there's 2 controlling cases: Wasatch County versus Oakleberry in 2008, and Utah County versus Butler in 2008, and they talk about what the continuous use is and whatnot. My only, and one of them basically is, one of them says trespassers can establish the continuous use, and the other one says if landowners do things like establish gates or put up posted signs or yell at people or whatever else, that it interrupts the 10-year standard. However, in whatever we do, I think that it would be important to put in the findings of fact on this application of the testimony that we heard in terms of whether or not we believe a 10-year or 20-year continuous use has been established. For my years, I heard even the landowner say that that they've been using it for 30 or 40 years. So I'm inclined to think that we should, at some level or another, formally give our opinion on that piece of the finding of fact of whether or not there's been a continuous use. If you look at alltrails.com on the specific trail, there's plenty of discussion about how there are trespassing signs and people get yelled at. There's no time period in terms of when that started to happen, but I'm inclined to believe that a 10-year standard over the course of the last 40 or 50 years has probably been established. And my main comment on this application is I just think it's important, however we vote, if we do vote, that we do offer an opinion on this. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ebler.
My comment is about about
Sorry,
property,
just
about
talking to my friends.
about property, about balancing the property rights. And I think Sean brought up a good point about the fact that if development was made on these lots individually, Cottonwood Heights, I want to make sure I'm correct on this, Cottonwood Heights as a city could not make any kind of requirement of trail, correct?
There is
that
not a
correct?
line in the ordinance that says when you build a house, you have to dedicate trails on master plans at the building permit level. Not to say we wouldn't make an attempt, because I
Right.
think we would, because again, this is an established priority. It's crystal clear, however, in the subdivision ordinance that that is a requirement.
Okay, thank you again for that clarification, because I think that's important to remember and important to see what the landowner has suggested that they are wanting to do. So I hear about wanting to continue to hike. I hear that loud and clear. But also keep in mind it is private property that is being used. If there's something that can be done with easement, I guess that's something, but that's not in terms of looking at lot consolidation, which is what we're looking at. That is our goal here. I think we want to just kind of keep that in mind.
All right, so let me first begin by saying I'm going to try the best I can, not being a legal expert, to rely on the law, and it will probably split both ways. The first is that I believe our burden in approving or not the consolidation of these lots is not whether it benefits the public, but whether it meets the legal requirement. And if it meets the legal requirement, if there's no grounds upon which we could deny it, then we must approve it. And that, to the best of my understanding, is the law. Secondly, to the best of my understanding, and again, you don't have to take it, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. There does exist on these parcels one or more prescriptive roads. There also exists on these parcels, in my opinion, one or more prescriptive easements, which are different things, but in my opinion, they both are fairly easy to establish and are really hard to claim they don't exist. That being said, that prescriptive road, if you take my position that it exists across the existing private road, because that private road has been used over that period of time to get from the public road to the canyon. If it's been established to have done that for over 10 years, then my understanding is that it is a prescriptive road. It comes across the property in another direction, and that also is a prescriptive road. Those prescriptive roads are different from prescriptive easements, but those prescriptive roads exist for the benefit of the public. And so those who worry that they have crossed these properties illegally are probably don't take my legal advice, but can put your mind at ease because a prescriptive road exists there today. The big question for the city has been the question of defense of those prescriptive roads and those prescriptive rights. And that's about having a case that challenges it. I think the building permit that will follow the question of this consolidation creates a real challenge because I believe that without abandoning a prescriptive road, you can't permit a building that encroaches on it. It's the public's road. And I may be wrong in that point of view, but that is my understanding of the law. If that is correct, then anything that the landowner would like to dedicate is interesting, but it doesn't change the fact that there is a prescriptive road that is where it is, and the public has a right to it unless the city formally abandons it. All that being said, I think there is nothing in the law that changes based on consolidating these lots, and there is nothing, in my opinion, that gives us the right to deny the landowner his right to consolidate them.
Thank you, Commissioner Sheldon. Commissioner Polson.
I knew that was coming. My view is kind of conflicted. One is that I think that there would be some benefit to the city by combining the lots, because that really does limit where the house is going to be simply because of the topography of the area. And it would make it possible to put a house there. I don't think that you could, and it would give us as a city some ability to make some changes for access. What those changes would be, I think that's what's up in the air right at the moment. Right now, from Lot 8, it's really quite high up the mountainside, and it doesn't really connect to anything. That was my concern in the business meeting, is that where does that trail come from? Where does access begin? And it begins in the neighborhood very remote from the canyon, and there's no parking or access there, not like there's parking or access where it is now. But I think it just makes access more difficult if that's where the access that is decided upon for this development, or else not a development, this area. So I don't know. If we were to table this and look more into that ability to have a better idea of access, so that it would really more convenient for those who are going to use it. From Cottonwood Heights, there's a bunch of people who do that. I'll admit, I haven't had that hike. And I've lived here 40 years. I just didn't know about it. But that's irrelevant. I just missed out. But if we table it, if we get a better resolution of how that's going, fine. If we approved putting the 3 lots together, but had an ability in the near future to resolve the issue of where that access is going to be, then I think that I'd have to agree that I don't know that we can deny it. I'm torn. Would it be advisable to look into this a little bit more and table it, or do you want to move ahead of it now in light of we could do more in the future?
You make a number of good points, and thank you to all the commissioners. And I'll just add a comment, but I'm anxious that we continue interactive dialogue here. This is not meant to be concluding the discussion. You know, we are a property rights state. We were very anxious to make sure that people's property rights, everyone in this room included. And so this idea of the consolidation in and of itself in a vacuum is a very simple, easy discussion to have. And even in the staff report, you know, the listing out of nearly 10 different considerations and variables, any one of which complicates our decision making, that's a long list. And to add to it, new information that was handed as we began our meeting and a submission from the property owner um, uh, this morning. That's a lot of new information. So I think we have the added difficulty too, to Commissioner Shelton's point that this is kind of Grand Central Station and has been for some time. And the problem of documentation of that fact and the legal ramifications of that are unique and challenging. And there's a lot at stake for the property owner and a lot at stake for the city. So in that circumstance, I think it behooves all of us to move carefully and thoughtfully as we try to do what's best and what's legal. And I think I can speak for all of us on the Planning Commission. We understand the passion in the room. I don't know anybody in Conwood Heights that says let's shut down trails and block people's access. But trying to open up access in a city that's fully built out is unique. And we continue as a city, and our staff painstakingly is trying to solve problems that long predated the existence of Cottonwood Heights. And the zone, if you noticed, is a zone that doesn't exist in its same format today. It's one of those that we inherit and that we try to address on a case-by-case basis. So and we risk the possibility or maybe even probability of legal action, but we also may need to have adjudication in order to determine what best practices in this circumstance. And I do reflect on the fact that staff has pointed out that we have had precedents and some similarities in a case fairly recently. So there are difficulties with this decision and with this challenge. And regardless of what the outcome is tonight, the consolidation is not going to be the only question that needs to be answered. And it will not be the consolidation immediately leads into a slew of other immediate check boxes that happen without a thorough consideration. I do share Commissioner Polson's concerns that we need to figure out the status of this, and that might warrant tabling, and especially in lieu of more recent information. But I'm curious to hear from the rest of the commission on that. And from a sequencing standpoint, we will have to address this issue of consolidation at some point. And if there's not a legal reason, it is a careful consideration to find a specifically legal reason not to consolidate these three issues. That is a separate issue to the trails issue. So those, and Commissioner Shelton, I think you spoke to that issue very, very carefully. So that just because if there were to be consolidation, the trails issue is not determined by that. Those are separate and independent issues. But those that are expressing that they have access that trail, if that's not being documented, that's simply talking into the microphone. So, and as staff has pointed out, this question has been asked before, and to Commissioner Shelton's point that the concern that, well, maybe was I trespassing, and I don't know if I want to have it documented that I was trespassing. If it's being accessed and it's being used, it needs to be documented. If it's not documented, then there's no recourse. So that in mind, what are the thoughts you have, commissioners? That was a long share.
Thank you for sharing. I do have one other question, and I apologize, Mike, I didn't ask during your presentation. You talked about that one of the requirements for the trail is the feasibility to connect, correct?
Yes.
So that would mean connecting on outside at each end of the property, if you will? I mean, on each, is that what that
It
means?
just means it needs to be feasible. Again, we can't require them to connect it all the way down. It's this line here. where it says, the specific location of the trail right away should be verified on ground. Trail should be located so that the route is feasible for construction and long-term maintenance. Insurmountable physical obstructions shall be avoided.
Okay. So it's talking about to be able to connect to other pieces of the trail would need to be able to happen. This trail through this parcel of 8 would need to be able to connect to others, correct?
Yes, that's my interpretation of that and the requirement to verify that on site.
Right, because I'm hearing a lot of
Yeah.
concern about where it's, and I apologize, I'm not familiar with this trail. Where this is being proposed in lot 8, that's not feasible for connectivity purposes and
Right.
usability and that kind of thing. And so I think it's just important to remember that's a requirement
Yeah.
of it. Okay.
Yeah, and this was the applicant's intention to demonstrate that the location they're proposing is feasible. Again, we would need to verify this whole thing on site and walk it with, with experts before we accept the proposed dedication. But they've at least done some homework on, they do think this route would be feasible.
Okay, thank you.
Could you please pull up the stipulations after, if this was to be approved on consolidation? What is the requirements? If we could just see that just one more time.
This, is that what you, or the
There should have been,
review
okay,
comments?
yes.
And again, this is not the exact review comments. This is a summary, kind of the flavor of them. The review packet is like 6 pages long.
And I think this is such an important factor, especially for us as commissioners, as well as for the public, because this battle, if this is to be consolidated, there is a lot of implications on this project that need to be looked at. And I think at the end of the day, for the legal parameters and what we as land use, body is going to be here is, following the state law and the city regulations on this. And, the city and the engineers that are going to be involved in this, I think are going to be incredibly important for us to look at from all aspects. And, water being one, trail system connectivity being another. We have to be looking at the property rights to either approve or disapprove this. And I think that from that standpoint, the easement rights, if we were to do lot consolidation tonight, this easement that was brought up, that has nothing to do with the lot consolidation. That's an important factor. That has something to do with, the current landowner and the water company at the end of the day. So any easements and any prescriptive easements are not going to be necessarily applicable for the lot consolidation. That's going to be another battle that will have to happen. But, this is step one of either disapproving it or approving it at the end of the day. And there is much more diligence that goes into this to, make sure that this is a feasible project and make sure this is a safe project and make sure this is a connected project for the city and for the master plan at the end of the day. So that's kind of my thoughts on this.
It's a really good point because I think there could be the misconception that if we approve consolidation, that then it's just on your way and everything's great. And that's certainly not the case. It's not a done deal until all these other steps happen, all these other agencies approve. It's a long road.
Yeah, for a little bit of perspective there, there was a plat preliminary approved by the Planning Commission in 2018 that just hit the recorder's desk this week. So depending on the complexity of the issue, that's not a guarantee it's ever the same, but it's very much still a requirement that they work through every review comment. So take that for what it's worth.
And I think that, going back into this, everybody's concerns here is trail connectivity as well as water. I would say that's one of the big concerns that I'm hearing here is, the water, the access, and working through that. And that's kind of the consensus that I was hearing. So I think that those necessary steps will be able to be alleviated here, that just from my perspective.
turned it off to turn it back on. One last thought. In my opinion, I said this earlier, is that the applicant has met the requirement to have their application approved. This application approved. I would tell the applicant, again, my opinion, that if you want to not face a big crowd, what you might consider is consenting to the existing prescriptive roads as being prescriptive roads. And I think if you were to do that, you would solve the legal question and move it forward. Now, not to say there aren't a lot of other legal questions and a lot of other questions, but you would put at ease a great number in the community who believe they have a right to that prescriptive road, and your consent would solidify that.
So the last point that I think, just as a reminder to see what our comfort level is, we've had lots of discussion about, this was platted in the 70s, and you know, with what lens are we looking at this piece of property? We have a sleds ordinance that plays in. We have easements, and easements as they're currently interpreted that play in. That being said, we're in 2024 and we have an application, and do we feel like we have need for any additional information beyond what's in front of us? Are we capable of making a decision about this tonight? Maybe that will be my first question to each of you. Are you ready to answer this question tonight?
I'm fine with moving forward.
Ready to answer the question?
They
They are, sir. Please,
Public comments closed, sir.
Sir, thank you. Commissioner Ebler is the one that do you have access to him?
We're going to get him back on here.
Okay.
So just with regard to Commissioner Shelton's comments, do we need more than one property owner to agree to what you just said about the easement or the road?
I don't think you solve the whole problem, but you can't ask the applicant for more than their.
Right, they can only do what they can do,
But
but other people would,
there'd
still be no trespassing signs up.
there would
that
be,
is
but there would
completely
still be
irrelevant.
a prescriptive road.
That would be completely irrelevant to this conversation. It would only be relevant as related to this particular parcel. So I would ask that we not consider that even as an issue above and beyond in any direction on this property. We are only talking about this piece. So,
We've got Commissioner Ebler
okay,
on the line for whenever you're ready for.
go ahead, Commissioner Ebler.
Thanks, Chair. So I just wanted to agree with Commissioner Shelton's comments. I think there's two things that we have to kind of sort out on this. The first one being that we have a legal standard in which we either approve or we don't approve this based upon what our code and statute says within what states and what the state says we can do, et cetera. And I think I agree that I think that the findings and what the applicant has done is sufficient enough that we would have to vote to approve the consolidation of the lands. I don't think that's a mutually exclusive determination of whether or not a prescriptive easement exists and whether or not the lot is buildable. I think those are two separate things. And as I said before, I think that we do need to make an official comment on whether or not we believe a prescriptive easement has been established or a 10-year use has been established. I agree with Commissioner Shelton that I think the evidence is overwhelming that the easement has been established over the decades, and some of the trespassing stuff and whatever else is probably a more recent thing, but certainly 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was used continuously. And I think the latter question is probably will wind up in civil litigation unless the applicant works with the public to kind of remove and mitigate that issue. But those are where my thoughts are.
Commissioner Ebler, in reference to my original question, do you feel like you're ready for the question tonight?
I mean, given some of the testimony in terms of the easement that seemed to just materialize, I do have some concerns on that, but I don't think that impacts our ability to approve or not approve the consolidation. I think this is a separate legal question, and that we're just bound by what the scope of our duties are. So I'd be fine voting, and I'd also be fine tabling it. But I think the preponderance of the evidence is that we could move forward with a vote.
Is there anyone that wants to make a motion to table, or are we ready to proceed?
That was a general question. I would just request if you make a finding regarding a prescriptive easement or road, that's the planning commission's finding. Just be given the context I reported on from the city attorney, that may not represent the city council's finding. It hasn't been discussed recently.
All right. I move to approve project SUB 24-001 based on the findings and recommendations listed in the staff report dated March 6, 2024.
I second it.
We have a motion from Commissioner Smith and a second from Commissioner Polson. What's in order now is further discussion of the motion. Any additional comments?
I mean, my additional comment is just what I made earlier of that I do think that we should go on record to say whether or not we feel that continuous use has been established.
Can I add that to my motion, that we go on record as understanding that there has been a prescriptive easement established?
Prescriptive road.
Prescriptive road, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to state it once carefully for staff to pick this up.
I move to approve project SUB-24-001 based on the findings and recommendations listed in the staff report dated March 6, 2024, with the understanding also that there has been an established prescriptive road established, as we've discussed here.
Okay,
I'll second that again.
Second that again. Okay, so that was from the original motion maker, so we'll take that as a friendly amendment, and the person making the second agreed as well. Any further discussion with the amendments?
So I think with that amendment, there's a couple questions that I would have, because this is a non-recorded easement that was presented to us in the beginning. Is that correct?
That's a different question, though. This is not.
So we're discussing the use. Is that correct?
Right.
The trail.
Okay, so I think with the use and the prescriptive easement of that use, I would have concern with that, because as Ebler had mentioned, there's been, comments about trespassing on all trails, and 3-4 of us have not actually been on this site. So I think that we need to further evaluate that to put that on record. What are your thoughts on that, Commissioner Ebler?
So the applicant themselves testified that in the 80s that they drove a Jeep there and whatever else. So I agree with what you're saying, but it's not that for my read of the case law, and I'm not an attorney, it's, the no trespassing signs and whatever else are important, but there's nothing in the record for us to consider when those signs went up, when hikers started getting yelled at and whatever else. But I think given the testimony that we heard kind of ad nauseum from the public, that there could be a different situation 20 or 30 years ago than there has been maybe in the last 10 or 15. And I think even the applicant themselves saying that they drove up there and whatever else, that there certainly has been an establishment of over a 10-year continuous use. Now, be that if that's in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s or whatever else, I think the preponderance of the evidence is that the record has been established that there's a 10-year continuous use, and I understand the point, but I don't think that we have to split hairs like that in terms of, we just have to say whether or not at any point in time in this in the history of this property was there a 10-year period in which hikers continuously used it, or the public continuously used it.
Yeah, my understanding of that, based on the city attorney, was it had to be an individual, if I remember correctly, for that continuous use. So I just want to make sure that we're clarifying that. Is it not individual? It's 100% the public.
An individual for a prescriptive easement, but a prescriptive road is any collection of individuals.
And the amendment to the motion is specifically prescriptive road, not easement.
Now with prescriptive road, I just want to make sure that we're also evaluating that appropriately. The size of the road on the parcel that we're seeing here is, I mean, there's a road, it's more of a trail. So I think that that's more of a use. So I don't know if we actually have a prescriptive road on this space.
That terminology is a little confusing, but the term prescriptive road applies to a road or a trail. So if it's a small walking trail, if it's used to get from point A to point B, it would be defined as a prescriptive road.
And that wouldn't
That's
be
my
a
understanding.
prescriptive easement. I feel like there's a lot of legal that I don't think that we can discern. And for me, I don't feel comfortable moving forward with this tonight without evaluating and consulting with the city attorney on this. And I would say, figuring out the terminology between prescriptive easement, prescriptive roads, so we can actually vote on that appropriately, personally.
I mean, my comment to that is we're not actually creating an easement with the comment or the amendment. All we're doing is we're creating a finding of fact that, based upon the preponderance of the testimony that we received, that a 10-year continuous use period was established. It doesn't actually create an easement at all.
And frankly, it may not be germane to the question because nevertheless, we're combining the lots. It's simply an acknowledgement that that was, it frankly, I think from a hygiene standpoint, acknowledges the input from the public and clears the space for the understanding and for the public record that the presumption is that this has existed and we are not defining the exact location of it. I mean, that to your point, we are not getting specific about it, but simply that it exists. And in my opinion, I don't know that's going to affect how the property owner moves forward necessarily. It simply acknowledges that it exists, and it may or may not be significant to the motion. It simply acknowledges the interaction tonight, and I do think it behooves those that are involved and engaged in this. It does add to the discussion that this ought to be discussed further, and to Commissioner Shelton's point. Or
I would just add that we have, as we looked to it earlier this evening, this is just the beginning. There are many steps that still have to be talked about, if need be adjudicated, but this isn't going to be construction starting tomorrow. This still a road to go to, but this is the start. And I don't see that we couldn't move ahead on this tonight with the little part that we've got in just combining those properties. The rest is going to come in time.
Absolutely. I think only with the amendment of us putting on record that finding of fact, there's a lot of facts that are going into this. And I think for the record of that, I think there's a lot more diligence that needs to go into place. And once again, I have spent time on this road. I have accessed this. However, by us putting on a finding of fact that there was a prescriptive easement there, that could have been an illegally used prescriptive easement or a prescriptive roadway, that's more so of my concern, that that could actually make this lot consolidation completely irrelevant, I guess you could say. It makes it irrelevant because, once again, we're trying to work with the trail systems, and we're trying to make this a place where there is going to be trails, And if we're now eliminating opportunity, there's no reason for them to grant that northern piece for the trail. So there's a lot of different facts that opens up, I would say, by putting that and understanding that space. And I think that for us, we want to make sure that we are stewards of the land in this space, and we are giving the opportunity so that we can actually create these trail connectivities. And my concern, if we create that space of that easement and, you know, actually incentivize that easement to be in place there, we're going to be running into more issues and, you know, more legal issues that come about on this that I don't think that we would necessarily want to open up at the end of the day. And that's where I would be completely comfortable with moving forward with the lot consolidation without that additional clause.
So just to clarify one of those points, so part of the problem with not actually as a deliberative body taking an opinion one way or the other, and I don't care necessarily if it gets voted down or whatever else, but I do think we need to take an official position on it because it's been discussed in the record, and if this did get litigated and if there was, you know, someone filed litigation for for the easement, the record in this transcript will absolutely get brought into those proceedings. And several of us have already gone on record to say, we believe that it's been established. So all we're doing is creating uncertainty within other proceedings versus just taking a position.
And I feel like that we need to have, you know, once again, there's four commissioners that have not walked on this property. You know, of course, we've listened to the public here, and in fact, I have walked on this property. And my thought process in walking on this property was I was probably trespassing at the end of the day.
That's not a relevant question if the 10-year period was established in the 80s. So whatever's happening right now doesn't mean anything. So all that has to happen is at any point in time, was there a 10-year continuous use where people weren't yelled at or whatever else. And I haven't heard any evidence other than this is a more recent thing. I've heard evidence even from the applicant saying that they used it, not that they used it and got yelled at. So, I mean, the problem is we've heard evidence, we've heard testimony, and all we have to do as fact finders is say, what do we find more credible one way or the other? So if we don't take a position, it won't matter because it's already been discussed and it's already in the record and we're just introducing uncertainty.
And I think my concern is that our role as a planning commission to state that about the easement or
Roadway.
prescriptive road, either way. I mean, whatever it is, I think our role is to determine the land use piece. These other things in terms of the prescriptive road and prescriptive easements are going to get resolved or established and as was brought up with the building permit, Commissioner Shelton brought up about if there is a prescriptive road, then there can't be a building built if there's that road. So I don't know that it's our role as planning commission to talk about that. I think our role is to look at the.
If you look at the model motion, though, we do have to come to a finding of fact with whether or not the land use designations are compatible with the general plan and the purpose and goals of the zoning district and master plans and whatnot. So, I mean, given the fact that this was on the trail master plan and whatnot, I mean, it's a point of conversation that we can't just ignore that we have some duty to interpret that.
I'm not saying we ignore it. I'm saying I'm not sure it belongs in the motion that we're talking about doing. Certainly there's plenty of facts, plenty of testimony to talk about the use of the land, but is that pertinent to talking about approving or not approving the consolidation of the lots? That's what I was getting.
I would agree with you on that because I think the finding of fact, I think, is one factor, as you had mentioned, Commissioner Ebler. You know, there was many comments that were brought up about this property. And if we were to be taking the finding of fact in all of the comments of all of the different uses, and, you know, there might be multiple, you know, potential prescriptive easements, there's not any specifics that we can discern from what was communicated tonight based on that finding of fact. I think everybody agrees that they have accessed this land. I think everybody agrees that they've walked through this land. However, I think at the end of the day, that is something that in this motion, I think it's irrelevant to this motion because we should be bringing up all of the different findings of facts in regards to this and either give specifics as to here is the spot. We're more so throwing out, hey, there is an opportunity for a potential prescriptive easement on this space or a prescriptive right of way on this space. So I would prefer keeping it out of this motion to unless we had more data, I would say. And I don't think we have enough data to be able to put this in the motion.
How do you reconcile our evaluation of the conformance with master plans if we're ignoring a fairly major piece of connectivity that exists currently in the land? So by voting on the consolidation of land and not commenting on an existing unique and our current situation, where we have an existing trail master plan that comments on this, but we're as a body saying we're not going to deal with that in terms of whether or not we think that the consolidation and the removal of a potentially prescriptive road or easement conforms or doesn't conform or comport with the existing master plan that was issued guidance on the specific area.
Because I believe it actually has to do with the roadway standpoint that
it's connectivity.
So it is the connectivity.
Connectivity in terms of whether or not you have access through that.
But the connectivity comes down to the roadway connectivity that we are looking at here. And I think the roadway connectivity, there's not enough data for us to be able to say that that roadway that is currently on the existing plat is going to be cohesive to the current trail systems that what we had seen when we had pulled up the assessor's parcel viewer in the working session, that trail system actually diverts from this parcel here, and it also diverts from the existing roadway on the plat. So I think that that's one of the things that we need to look at here. And at the end of the day, we need to make sure that, once again, we have enough data to be able to say, hey, this is a prescriptive roadway easement, and and I believe that's the technical term here, a prescriptive roadway easement that we are looking to be putting here. And the roadway easement, the only thing that we have to go off of is the unrecorded plat that was presented this evening from the water district, as well as the original plat. And right now, the original plat, the current roadway is actually not being used in the trail systems that's in place. It's being used to the north of that trail system, or of the current roadway.
Okay, I'm finding about 50% of the things that you're saying are accurate, but I feel like we're diverging a little bit, and we need to hear from a few others on the commission here. So I appreciate your comments.
Can I staff's finding on the connectivity issue is that there's the provision in the subdivision ordinance that requires a trail dedication or easement in a place where it creates connectivity. So that's the finding for connectivity of a regional trail network is we will ensure that trail easement is in a location. The prescriptive road
that supports the trails master
that
plan.
complies with the adopted master plan.
Right,
Again,
right.
I think it's worth bringing up again because this has gone the rounds. This is where the city left off on this issue. You can question the methodology of it, but this was investigated. Ultimately, the city had felt it hadn't found sufficient body of compelling evidence of necessary, open, continuous, adverse, and uninterrupted use for the required time period. Outside counsel said, success in making a claim of public or prescriptive roads was possible but not assured. That, I would say, is the city's official stance on this matter as it is today, without additional work on this.
So I think it's important that we acknowledge that we do have a new piece of data. We've heard public comment that it appears that there is evidence that there's a prescriptive road that may exist on the plat. We can choose to acknowledge that in the motion, and that I think was the intention of the motion maker, or we can choose to completely cut that off, and it will have to exist only as it occurred in this meeting. And that's the question. So let's start with the vote on just whether or not we include the prescriptive road as part of the motion. And I'm going to just straw poll that to just see where we're at on this. Are you ready to?
I think you have a motion and a second, though. You've had comment. Don't you have to call for a vote on that motion?
We can call for a vote on the entire motion, or do we want to
You can call for a
disarticulate?
vote on the amendment.
We can, and that's where I'm headed is, do we want to call for a vote on the amendment?
The amendment being that we have had a discussion that suggests that there may be a prescriptive roadway.
I think based on the discussion, we need to vote on that as a separate issue before we take the main motion.
But
Just to
that's
honor-
combined, but I mean, that's combined with the whole motion. So we're voting on the motion as it is right now.
Okay, so
That includes the prescriptive road.
Would-
So we have to vote on that.
would you like to vote on the entire motion, or would the motion maker consider withdrawing the motion?
I'm considering withdrawing the motion and maybe restating it differently. Or having someone else restate it if
Okay,
they prefer.
let's withdraw the motion.
Okay.
Okay. The floor is open then.
How about, I move to approve project SUB 24-001 based on the findings and recommendations listed in the staff report dated March 6, 2024.
I'll second that motion yet again.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. A motion from Commissioner Smith and a second from Commissioner Polson. What's in order now is discussion of the motion.
As I understand it, that's really the question at hand. As presented to us earlier, the question about easements and access, those are important questions, but I don't think that was our assignment tonight, as I understand it. I think those things deserve a
agree
lot
with
of discussion still, but
Yeah.
I would agree.
Any further discussion? Sir, I'm going to ask you to withdraw your comments. Thank you. We're in a formal setting here, so thank you for respecting our process. Are we ready for the question? Okay.
So we're gonna, based upon the current motion, we're abandoning, adding in a finding of fact or even discussing this, even though it's actually part of the record. And we've actually, some of us have gone on the record on that point.
Commissioner Ebler, you are welcome to make a motion at this time if you would like. But otherwise, we are ready for it appears we are ready for the question, unless you have some additional comment that you'd like to make on the current question. You can make a comment or you can make a motion.
Yeah, I made a comment and in terms of the existing findings of fact 1 through 4 don't speak to the evidence that was presented today, nor does it comment on certain positions that some commissioners have taken on that public testimony.
Are you ready to make
And
are you intending to make a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I mean, my preference is to add in a finding of fact 5 that says.
Is this a motion?
Yes.
You're making an amendment to the motion. Okay, let me have you state it clearly for the record.
I move that we find a finding of fact number 5 to the existing findings of fact 1 through 4 that add in that evidence was presented that was found to be credible, that an existing prescriptive road exists on the current plot assemblage.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. What's in order now is discussion, discussing the amendment.
Commissioner Mills, we have 2 motions and 2 seconds.
right.
We have
So-
a motion and we have an amendment to the main motion. So we've got what's in order is to deal with the amendments. And then we'll go back to the main motion.
But it's still it's one thing. We
It's not,
don't-
it's
No,
not one thing.
no.
There's an
You go
amendment.
on the amendment first, and if the amendment dies, you're back on the motion.
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah.
This is Robert's rules.
So-
Okay, so we're discussing the amendments.
So I believe that we had many findings of fact tonight. So if we are going to go by that rule and that initiative, Commissioner Ebler, I believe that we need to document every single finding of fact, and in this motion, put every comment of the use and the findings of facts that we had from the 70 people that talked tonight and the emails that came in as well. So I would prefer to keep it off of this motion because there was many findings of fact this evening.
Okay, we've heard from
So
Commissioner Ebler and Commissioner Steinman have both spoken to the motion. I'd like to hear from anyone else who wants to speak to the motion. Commissioner Polson.
I think that we could go back and forth all night on trying to decide what we ought to include and what we ought not to include. The clear motion is, will we or will we not bring those three pieces of property together into one piece? The rest of it, I think, will be addressed at a later date as we go through the process. I think that's the one thing that's slipping by us right now, is that there are several more levels that need to go through before any construction starts, that goes forward much at all. This is just very preliminary, and I think we may be getting ahead of the game. It's true that these issues do need to be resolved, but do they need to be dealt with this evening? I think we ought to just go back to what we came here to do. Will we or will we not combine those three pieces of property together and let then the rest of these issues be dealt with in the future?
Are there any other comments to the amendment to the main motion?
I also support not including anything outside of voting on consolidating the lots in the motion.
I'd call for a vote on the secondary
Okay,
motion.
the question's been called for a vote on the amendments to the main motion. What is now in order is a vote on the amendment. Commissioner Ebler,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Steinman,
No.
Commissioner Polson,
No.
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
No.
and Commissioner Mills, yes. And the amendment fails, and we're back to the main motion. So what's in order now is any further discussion of the main motion.
I'll call the question.
Question's been called. What's in order now is to vote on the main motion. Commissioner Ebler,
No.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Polson,
Yes.
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Steinman,
Yes.
Commissioner Mills, yes. The motion passes. Okay. Next order of business we have tonight is one matter regarding the consent agenda, approval of Planning Commission minutes from January 3, 2024. Just in conclusion for the public, we appreciate your engagement and the ability to interact with you, and this is not completed by any stretch of the imagination. So please stay engaged and stay tuned. And I think you'll find that we have a lot of work to do, and I'm not going to put odds on whether or not this project will be completed or not. And I think I would encourage the public to be vigilant, and our staff is doing their very best to follow the law. And I believe that we're all doing the best we can here. So you've had a chance to review the Planning Commission minutes. Do we have a motion regarding the 4.1 on the agenda?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor of approval of Planning Commission minutes from January 3, 2024, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes, and one more motion in order.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
We have a motion from Commissioner Anderson and was that Commissioner Steinman? Smith, second. All those in favor say aye.
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 We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So we'll see you guys back for April. April is the beginning of the new quarter, so the calendar does show 2 meetings. Stay tuned on that. I think the second one may get canceled, so please plan on the first April meeting and I'll keep you posted on the second. And want to wish a very happy birthday to Commissioner Steinman.